Some blocks, some parcels of land don't quite fit into residential and they don't fit into rural. Can you just explain what went on here?
It's very frustrating in that area, especially around Mowbray. That under previous regimes of council, such as when we were Cairns, they were allowed to cut their blocks up into smaller sections. And there are some blocks that are left over at the moment that are halfway in between. They're smaller than the 40 that they need to be under our planning scheme, but they're too big just to be a rural farm, like for a little house, a hobby type thing. And so we've got quite a few of these blocks left over that are too big to be a rural house, but too small to be a rural farm. So, people like this applicant have come forward and asked if they can cut it in half and turn it into 2 rural house blocks. But unfortunately, because of the way our planning scheme is and the way the state planning scheme is, we'd get ourselves in hot water if we were to say yes to it and override the plan. So it's homework we need to do as a council, and I will be pushing forward with the staff to look at this and see how we can go about changing small parts of our planning scheme to allow these little properties that fall through the cracks. And we're certainly not talking about breaking apart our agriculture areas. We don't want that. We need to retain our agricultural areas. But for these small blocks that are in that little section there, we certainly need to do something for them.
Bit of tweaking, so to speak.
Bit of tweaking, exactly.
All right, permanent road closure, Rasmussen Road, Kasori. Could you explain that to us?
Just an old road reserve that goes through a person's property. They're just cleaning it up and they want to take hold of that land, so they put an application in.
Now, trustee leases, registration of terms for trustee leases. Lisa S. had a few problems with this.
Well, there are historical issues that we're cleaning up, and that's what the staff are doing. They're going through some of these old leases that we have with various different bodies and working out what they're supposed to be doing, what they're not supposed to be doing, do they even have a lease in place, etc. So, it's really important that council does have leases on all the people that utilise our land, etc. And we're in that circuit. And, they're cleaning it up, and that's really important. They're doing that. And, of course, this policy is now just tightening all that up.
Revoke busking general policy. So how do you feel about busking? Now, you have the entertainment background with the clink and what have you. What's your thoughts on buskers?
Well, I love buskers. I think buskers create a great atmosphere. But if you look at Port Douglas and the way it is, there's really nowhere where buskers can go that's on council land as such that they're not going to be interfering with accommodation properties. And this is the problem we're having. The police are coming to us because someone's out playing bongos in front of a hotel, etc. So it was silly for us to give them permission to do it if the police were going to move them on. So the best place for them to go is on private land. And there are different areas like the Port Village Shopping Centre, for example. You quite often see the buskers in there. That's on private land. It's out of council's touch. And, that's up to them to deal with the owners of that private land and make a deal with them to sit on it. But again, if they're making a noise and disturbing, the police will step in and, of course, move them on. The buskers are great in areas like Cairns where they've got big malls and there's locations for them to go. At the moment, we don't really have anything like that in the area. And, of course, if someone's down busking at Rex Mill Park, they're not going to be interfering with someone. So, again, it'll just fall under bylaws instead of having a busking policy.
Small business friendly charter, what's that about?
Fantastic. It's a body that encourages council to do things for the right way for small businesses, and it's a charter they've got to ensure that we're doing all the appropriate things that are best for our small businesses. And of course we've agreed to that and we want to become part of it, and we look forward to working with them to ensure that we are doing the right thing with all our small businesses.
Tourism Port Douglas Daintree Resources Performance Agreement, $400,000 21-22, $450,000 22-23, and $500,000 2023-24. Now there was a fair bit of discussion on this. Councillor Noley wanted to give them 4 years.
Well, that's right. Originally they came to us and asked us for 4-year term. But as I agree with the fact that that may be what they want, but I'm not going to make decisions for the next term of council because that's happened to us before, and you get suddenly these costs and you can't get out of that because you've got a contract for it. The next term of council, they can decide what they want to give TPDD. So we've given them enough to cover up until they're covered till 24. There's an election in 24. And that new council, when it's elected, they can decide themselves what they want to fund the tourism body. Anything can happen between now and then.
Lisa Scomerson said, council hasn't won lotto. That was a quote from her. And we may be paying them too much, $250,000. They're okay with that. Why aren't we paying them that? and why are we paying them more?
Well, they certainly used to get a lot more than that, but you remember last year I had a lot of concerns with what they were doing with the money and how they were doing the marketing and why they were doing the marketing, because they never had any proper documentation to prove it. So we set them the challenge in this last financial year to do that groundwork, get a destination tourism plan in place, get a brand strategy in place, get an event strategy in place, so you know what you're actually advertising for and why you're advertising, who you're advertising to, and so you're hitting those right markets, so you know you're going to get bang for buck for your money. Now they've done that groundwork, they've done a lot of work over the last year, they've presented these documents to us, so at least now we've got confidence saying, okay, we give you $400,000, you're going to be using it to hit the right markets that we actually really want, and we will get the best bang for buck for our dollar. And that was the important part for me, to make sure that we know that the spending that we're giving them is actually going to be for the benefit for this Shire as far as our tourism goes. And now, to me, is the right time to be marketing. I cut it back last year because we foresee that it wouldn't be what required this year. We did a lot of work with TT&Q as well to ensure that the tourism's remained. But now we've got, of course, moving forward, hopefully the international borders within 12 months' time will be starting to open up, and we will be in the right market because we've done the next 12 months worth of marketing overseas as well as domestically to ensure that the tourists want to come here.
It's interesting too, Mareeba Council, you were saying at the meeting, around about $700,000 to the tourism, their local tourism, so we've got to compete.
We do, and we're not the only ones. When you consider the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast and Byron Bay, all these places, they'll be pumping money into their tourism. So while $400,000 really isn't a lot of money when it comes to advertising and tourism, so they spread that quite thinly throughout a lot of different areas and a lot of different fingers, and they contribute to a lot of bigger projects, so we get better bang for buck as well. So $400,000 as far as advertising for 12 months for an international destination, it's not much. And I really do hope now we've got all this data and we've got this information, it can be used really smartly.
Douglas Chamber of Commerce, you're helping them as well?
Well, last year, of course, we gave them a grant of the $50,000 and they had to do certain work over 12 months. Because the way their annual general meeting fell, they didn't actually sign the contracts till later in the year. I think it was September when they signed the contracts. So they didn't actually start using that or progressing through it until after September. So they've come to us and saying, listen, we're still 3 months behind because we started late. Can we just extend it again till September? And so that's what we've done. We've just given them that longer period to finish what they're required to do.
Do you believe the Chamber of Commerce is doing enough?
Yeah, I think we can always do better and we can always do more, but it's a really hard one because the people that run the chamber, they're busy themselves at the moment. They've all got small businesses and they're crazy busy. They're all volunteers. I believe they've now got one part-time person who's helping, and that's certainly, you can see that through the emails that are coming out. They're very proactive and they're good at getting some details through to us now.
Do they need a full-time person?
Well, I think most chambers do. Certainly Check Hands Chamber's got a full-time person. It would be great if they could get one, but the budgets, again, aren't there unless the businesses support Chamber. So all the small businesses need to become members. Those memberships go to funding that body, and the more that join it, the more money they've got. They could possibly get a full-time person in there to make sure they're interacting properly with the businesses. But I think they're doing really well for considering how busy they are, and the fact, as I said, they're all busy themselves and they're small businesses. There's certainly an improvement on what it used to be. You can definitely see that. There's lots of events, there's breakfasts, they have lots of meeting, they're bringing people up here, they're doing training sessions, and that's what we want from them.
Great Barrier Reef Legacy came up next, council grants. Now this was interesting, they're changing a project, they're changing the name of a project to Wales, I think. Can you please explain that one?
So they put a grant application in to do a project, and unfortunately because of external resources they haven't been able to succeed in progressing with that project. So they've come back to us and said, listen, we don't want to give the money back to you because we've got lots of great projects. This is another one that we were looking at. Would you consider allowing us to do this project instead, which involves the whales? And we looked at it and it certainly was another great project, so it's well worth funding also. So we just weighed it up. Rather than taking the money back off them, we'd much rather see them do a good project, and so we've changed that so that allow them to do it.
QAO interim management letter, and you were talking about risk management there. And Councillor Zamataro said, and I think the other councillors were interested as well, there was information in that about the Daintree ferry and they didn't know about that. Now, Did they need to know that?
Not really. Everyone knew that there was a risk. It was a discussion that was had with the audit committee, and that the audit committee is there to formulate different issues council may happen and may come across, and of course risk management's one of those things. So a report was given to the audit committee, and on that one of the things was the Daintree Ferry. Now, as I said at the meeting, if you didn't think the Daintree Ferry was a risk to the council in the place we were at, something's really wrong. Okay, we hadn't signed a contract, we were wondering where we were going to go, what direction we were taking with it. So of course it was a risk, and it's something that was discussed with the audit committee, but nothing that wasn't discussed with the councillors at workshops.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kerr.
Thank you very much, and don't forget, if you're going to do it in Douglas.